This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and in this episode 927 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Underdog. Thanks for tuning in. Underdog is the best place to play fantasy sports. You can open up the app or go to the website to play Pick'em and Champions mode, or if you're like me, you can join some snake drafts for each week's slate of games. During October, Underdog's running a different promo every single day with Boosttober. You can take advantage of those promos by signing up today. And if you sign up now, you also get access to my rest of season rankings. Those are updated in season every Tuesday. And on Tuesday this week, they were updated a lot because the NFL had a lot of wide receiver moves. All you have to do is head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up, and when you do, use promo code LATEROUND. That'll get you access to the promos, a deposit bonus, and my rest of season rankings. Again, that's UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code LATEROUND. So we saw the new Jets offense in Week 6, and it looked a lot more competent without Nathaniel Hackett in charge. There was also a change in how they were deploying their running backs. Breece Hall in Week 6, he had an 86% snap share. That was a season high. He ran a route on 76% of the team's dropbacks. That was also a season high. We saw a little rotation with Hall and Braylon Allen at the goal line, but this is the kind of usage that got me and a lot of others excited about Breece Hall back in Week 1. Now, I do think the Davante Adams trade could lower his target share a little bit, but that could be negated by a more potent offense. Everything got back on track for Breece Hall in Week 6. Let's hope this kind of usage continues. Noah Brown almost made the 15 transactions list this week. He hasn't had a monster game yet. He's yet to score 10 or more PPR points in a game, but he's been getting more and more work in this Washington offense. In weeks 2 and 3, Brown was running a route on roughly 45% of the team's dropbacks. Over his last 2 games, that number's been closer to 70%. He saw 24% target share in Week 6, which was a season high. Now, I know a player like Brown isn't all that important in a regular 12-team league, but plenty of you are in deeper formats. And in those formats, he's roster-worthy. I talked about this in the weekly data dump thread that I do on Twitter and through my newsletter, but I think it's worth repeating. Javonte Williams right now has a 54% running back rush share and a 14% target share per game. If we lower those parameters to a 50% running back rush share and a 13% target share, Williams is just one of 7 qualified running backs to get to those numbers. Isaiah Pacheco is part of that list, but I'm not counting him as qualified. The other backs to get there are Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, Breece Hall, and DeAndre Swift. Bijan Robinson just misses the mark in target share, but we can add him to the list if you want, sure. Kamara is averaging 22.8 PPR points per game this year. Aaron Jones, 15.7. Kenneth Walker, 22. Tony Pollard, 15.2. Breece Hall, 15.6. DeAndre Swift, 15.1. Bijan Robinson, 15.5. Javonte Williams, 8.6. I went back and looked, and of all the running backs since 2011 to have gotten to those thresholds, to have had a 50% running back rush share and a 13% target share per game rate, there's been about 80 of them. None of them scored below 11 PPR points per game. Javonte Williams is under 9 points per game. Williams has been playing about 4 PPR points per game below expectation to start the year. That's based on his usage and where he's seeing his volume. He's been ineffective, but I do expect somewhat of a bounce back as long as he's able to maintain this usage. We'll see if that happens, though. Speaking of fantasy point expectation, Cole Kmet is currently outpacing his expected fantasy points according to PFF by over 3 PPR points per game. That's not that much of a surprise, though. He's a top 3 tight end in cumulative fantasy points scored, but he has just 2 top 15 performances this season, and just 1 game with a 20% target share. So he's definitely a sell candidate. I just don't know how much you're going to get for him. I feel like there's at least one trend per week where I talk about Chase Brown's upward trend in usage, but it's an important storyline in fantasy football. So here we go again. Because once again, Brown's usage got better. In week 6, Brown outsnapped teammate Zach Moss for the first time all year. He ran more routes, he saw more rush attempts, and he had a higher target share too. Moss is still going to be a problem, and he's not going to go away. But I do think it's official. Chase Brown is the 1A in that backfield. This is why patience is the most important attribute for a fantasy football manager. Part of the reason that we've seen success from the Giants wide receivers and even Tyrone Tracy recently through the air is because the Giants just aren't targeting their tight ends at all. When you're not targeting a position, that means that those targets are going somewhere else. New York has a league low 8.9% target share to tight ends this season. If you compare that to every team that's played since 2011, that's a bottom 6 number. Now, I'd expect them to get someone like Theo Johnson a little bit more involved as the season goes on. But this is part of the reason that we can continue being bullish on the better weapons in that offense. Even when Malik Neighbors has been sidelined, Darius Slayton is seeing a 30% target share. And at least part of the reason for that is because they're not forcing these middle-of-the-road tight ends. They're not forcing them the ball like some other teams do. We've only seen 2 A.J. Brown games this year, but it feels like not enough people are talking about how good he's been in those games. So far in the year, Brown has seen target shares of 34.5% and 37.5%. He scored 22.9 and 23.6 PPR points. He's been targeted on 28% of his routes run. That's a career high with the Eagles. Now, big plays are definitely helping boost his totals, but he's also A.J. Brown. He's going to make those splash plays. This is just a reminder that A.J. Brown is a stud. Josh Jacobs has had a weird season. On one hand, he's not being used as a receiver nearly as much as people probably thought he would. He's actually outside the top 30 right now in running back target share. He's only had one game with a double-digit percentage target share this season. Now, on the other hand, there should be some regression heading his way. His route participation does rank in the top 20 at running back, so he should be seeing a slightly higher target share. The Packers have also been throwing for a lot of their touchdowns. On the season, 14 of their 17 touchdowns have come via the air. That gives them the highest pass-to-rush touchdown ratio in all of football. When that regresses a little bit, Josh Jacobs is going to be the one who benefits. I think he's more of a hold probably than a buy, but if you need a little bit of variance on your team, I could understand trading for him right now. Baker Mayfield has been awesome in fantasy football this year. He's finished worse than QB7 this year just once, and it came against the Broncos. They rank as the second toughest opponent for quarterbacks by adjusted fantasy points allowed. Tampa Bay hasn't had this cakewalk of a schedule either. Washington is looking like a little bit of a tougher matchup than they appeared at the start of the season. Detroit has actually been okay-ish against quarterbacks, especially last week. The Eagles, they've been a bottom half matchup. The Saints, they have too. The wild part is that rest of season, the Bucs have the second best schedule on paper for quarterbacks. That's by adjusted fantasy points allowed. Baker could just be your dude from here on out, even in single quarterback formats. We'll end today's show with one of our favorites, Mark Andrews. Andrews finally found the end zone in week 6, but guys, my answer is no. No, he's not back. He did see an uptick in routes against the Commanders. He ran a route on 60% of the team's dropbacks. But that's still far away from his approximate 75% rate in weeks 1 and 2. It was good to see him get a 16% target share, but this is exactly the kind of work that we get out of a tight end streamer. Maybe this is the start of something more consistent for Mark Andrews, but I think we should be more pessimistic than optimistic about it. He had a better game in week 6, but it still wasn't great. That's it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you had subscribed to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LateRoundQB. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll catch you tomorrow with the Weekly Sleeper Show.